I'm Chelsea Porter, 32, sitting at my parents' dining table in their Dallas villa for our family's Thanksgiving dinner. My sister, 3 years older, thrived in these moments, leaning forward with that smug grin that could light up any room. I had just purchased a stunning home in Highland Park. She spoke sharply, silencing the conversation. 3 stories, marble floors, a pool you'd kill for. Chelsea, when are you going to finally settle down? Her words hit like a practice jab, meant to keep me small while she grabbed all the attention. My parents' eyes locked on me, their usual mix of pity and judgment, waiting for me to stumble over an excuse. My younger brother raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension. It was the same old pattern: lift her up, push me down. But tonight I wasn't playing their game. I set my wine glass down with a deliberate clink that cut through the silence, letting it stretch until her smirk faltered. Then I met her gaze, my smile cold and unyielding. "I already did," I said, each word measured, slicing through her arrogance. "I just don't invite people who doubt me." Her fork clattered against the plate. My parents froze, and her grin flickered like a candle about to go out. They thought they had me figured out, that she was untouchable. But I was ready to turn their world upside down. The tension crackled. This night was about to unravel. Mandy's boasting about her Highland Park mansion hung in the air like a victory banner. I leaned back, letting her jab settle while my parents' eyes flitted between us, their silence louder than any praise they'd ever given her. They were expecting me to crumble, to mutter some excuse about my life. But I wasn't the underdog anymore. Mandy pressed on. "You should see the place," she said, confidence radiating. "Home theater, wine cellar, the whole works. I closed the deal myself. Top-tier negotiations, record time." She flashed a grin, fishing for admiration, and my parents fell for it. Their nods came fast, their smiles wide, as if she'd just won the Nobel Prize. "Smart move, Mandy," Dad said warmly, approving like always. He didn't even glance at me. Mom added softly but just as proudly, "It's a solid investment, honey. A future you can really build on." Their praise was a familiar duet, one I'd heard my whole life. Always for Mandy, never for me. I took a slow sip of wine, cool glass in hand, watching Mandy soak up their admiration. He had always been the star. Her promotions celebrated, her successes framed as family legend. Me. I was the one they assumed was still finding her way. Across the table, my younger brother caught my eye, sharp and knowing, sensing the brewing storm. Mandy wasn't done. "The market's brutal," she continued, leaning forward, hands emphasizing her words. "But I know how to play it. Got the house for a steal, way below market value." She paused, letting her brilliance linger, then turned to me, her smile tightening to reveal just a hint of claws. "Chelsea, you're still doing that freelance gig, right? Must be tough scraping by like that." Her dig was sharp, deliberate, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard her shade before, her way of painting me as the family underachiever. My parents leaned in, expectant, waiting for me to confirm Mandy's story. They always bought her version, never mine. My brother's eyebrow twitched, a silent signal he knew her game. I set my glass down deliberately, calm but calculated, and tilted my head to meet Mandy's gaze. "Freelance," I said, voice steady, almost amused. "That's one way to put it." Her eyes narrowed, unease flickering, quickly masked with a laugh, brushing me off like always. "Come on, Chelsea," Mandy said lightly, though her tone carried venom. "No offense, but you can't buy a place like mine with gig money. When are you going to get serious? Land a proper career?" The table fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. My parents' faces held the usual mix of curiosity and condescension, their faith in Mandy rock solid. They'd spent years building her up as the golden child, while I was the one always a step behind. But they didn't really know me, the deals I'd closed, the empire I'd quietly built, the life I'd made without their approval. My brother leaned forward, fingers tapping his glass, eyes flicking between Mandy and me. "So, Chelsea, what are you up to these days?" he asked, casual but deliberate, offering me a lifeline. It was the first real question I'd gotten all evening, and it sparked a fire. I smiled slowly, letting their assumptions press in one last time. "Oh, I've been busy," I said, light but sharp. "You'd be surprised what I've pulled off." Mandy's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, the first crack in her perfect mask. My parents exchanged a glance, confidence in her wavering, but remained silent. Mandy recovered quickly, tossing her hair and laughing. Busy with what? She pressed, teasing yet tense, daring me to answer. Don't tell me you're still chasing pipe dreams instead of building something real. Her words were meant to trap me in their box of expectations. But I wasn't staying there. Not tonight. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, gaze locked on hers. Real, I said, letting it hang heavy with the weight of everything she assumed she knew. You have no idea what real looks like. The room went silent. Mandy's laughter died in her throat. I knew I had set the stage for the coming storm. My words hit like a stone, tension rippling across the table. Mandy's forced smirk remained, but her eyes revealed unease, sensing the ground shift beneath her. I stayed still, letting the weight of my words settle while my parents' gazes turned to me. Their usual pity was now tinged with curiosity, maybe even doubt. They weren't used to me standing my ground. Dad cleared his throat, voice firm, trying to guide things back to familiar territory. Chelsea, what's this about? He asked, brow furrowed. You're always vague. If something's going on, just say it. His tone carried the old mix of concern and condescension, like speaking to a child who wandered too far. Mom nodded, hands clasped tightly, voice soft but pointed. We just want to know you're okay, sweetheart. You don't talk about your life much. Are you managing? The question stung. Not cruel, but assuming I was barely scraping by, just as Mandy wanted them to believe. I stayed calm, fingers lightly tapping my wine glass, letting the words hang. Mandy seized the moment to reclaim attention. You know, she said, voice loud, almost too bright, I'm not just about houses and deals. I'm hosting a charity gala next month, raising funds for underprivileged kids. Already got a big donor lined up. She paused, expecting praise. Her smile wide but fragile. My parents didn't disappoint. That's incredible, Mandy, Dad said, pride swelling like she'd saved the world. Mom reached for her hand, beaming. You're doing such good work, honey, she said warmly, oblivious to cracks in Mandy's story. They devoured her act, blind to her darting eyes searching for skeptics. I stayed quiet, lips curving just enough to keep her off balance. My younger brother, always sharper than he let on, wasn't fooled. He leaned forward, voice casual yet cutting. Charity gala, huh? He said, his gaze fixed on Mandy. That's impressive. So where's the money actually going? Which organization? His question was straightforward, but it hit like a dart, and I noticed Mandy's fingers twitch, her smile faltering for just a moment. She recovered quickly, tossing her hair with a laugh. It's a new project, she said, her voice smooth but hurried. We're still finalizing things, but it's going to be huge. I'm talking six-figure donations. She glanced at me as if daring me to challenge her again, but I just raised an eyebrow, letting her stumble. Dad frowned, catching on to my brother's question. That's ambitious. His tone sounded uncertain now, eyes flicking to Mandy. You've got all the paperwork ready, right? For the charity. He wasn't accusing, but the weight behind the words made Mandy's grin tighten as her fingers fidgeted with her napkin. Mom jumped in, trying to ease the tension. I'm sure Mandy has it under control, she said, her voice bright but strained, as if trying to convince herself. He always does. But her eyes flicked to me, then back at Mandy, and I could see the doubt starting to creep in. For the first time, they weren't blindly believing Mandy's story. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on Mandy. Sounds like a lot to handle, I said lightly but pointedly, letting her know I wasn't impressed. Must be tough juggling all those plates. Houses, deals, charities. My words were calm but sharp, and she shifted in her seat, gripping her glass tighter. My brother pressed on. Yeah, I'm interested, he said, casual but relentless. You're raising all this money, but who's actually getting it? You've got a name for the charity, right? This time his question cut deeper, and Mandy's laugh sounded forced, brittle, like she was scrambling for a reply. I told you it's still in the works, she snapped, voice sharper, composure slipping. You don't just throw a gala together overnight. She turned to me, eyes narrowing, trying to deflect. Chelsea, you wouldn't understand. You're too busy with your little projects to know how real business works. The jab was weak and desperate, and I let it slide. My parents' expressions shifted, less certain, more questioning, like they were noticing cracks in Mandy's perfect image. Dad's brow furrowed, Mom's hands twisted in her lap, her smile fading. They were waiting for my response, but I wasn't ready to reveal everything. Not yet. I tilted my head, giving Mandy a steady look. Real business? I said, voice low, almost amused. Maybe check your own books before talking about mine. The room froze. Mandy's eyes widened for a moment. I knew I'd hit a nerve. The tension thickened and I could feel the storm approaching. I leaned back, letting the moment stretch, fingers brushing the stem of my wine glass. Want to talk about books, Mandy? My voice calm but sharp cut through the silence. Let's talk about mine. I paused, locking eyes with her, watching her fingers clench around her napkin. I've been building a real estate portfolio for years, multiple properties, all cash deals. My crown jewel, a $5 million mansion in Preston Hollow, paid in full, no loans. The table went silent. Mandy's smirk disappeared, her face paling. Dad's jaw dropped, fork frozen midair, while Mom's hands flew to her mouth, eyes wide. My brother's lips twitched, amusement flickering in his gaze as if he'd been waiting for this. The weight of my words hit, shattering their assumptions in one clean strike. $5 million. Dad stammered, voice shaky. Chelsea, you paid cash for a mansion? His eyes searched mine for confirmation, trying to reconcile the daughter he'd underestimated with the one sitting in front of him. I nodded, calm, unapologetic. Yep, I said, letting it land. No mortgage, no debt, all mine. Been living there over a year now. The truth spread shock through their faces. Mandy's jaw tightened, Mom's hands trembled. Dad blinked rapidly, recalculating everything he thought he knew. Mandy laughed sharply, brittle, trying to regain control. Come on, Chelsea, she said, voice high, almost shrill. A mansion paid in full? You expect us to believe that? She looked to our parents for backup, but they were too stunned. Her laugh faltered, panic creeping into her fingers as she fiddled with her glass. Why not? I said, gaze locked on hers. I've been closing deals while you've been spinning stories. My portfolio's worth more than your Highland Park house and your so-called charity combined. I leaned forward, letting the words sink in, watching her squirm. You didn't think I had it in me, did you? Mom's voice broke, thin and uncertain. Chelsea, why didn't you tell us? She asked, hands clasped tightly, eyes flicking between me and Mandy. The mansion? That's huge. We had no idea. Her words held guilt, realizing how little she'd asked about my life. I shrugged, tone light but pointed. You never asked, Mom, I said, letting it hang. You were too busy cheering Mandy's every move. Dad flinched, face tightening, wanting to argue but unable to find words. Mandy's eyes narrowed, knuckles pressed against her glass, composure cracking under my revelation. That's ridiculous. Mandy snapped, voice sharp, desperate. You're making this up to steal attention. A $5 million mansion from freelance work? She turned to our parents, pleading. She's exaggerating, right? You know her, always dreaming big, never following through. My brother leaned forward, voice cutting through her defense. Doesn't sound like dreaming to me, he said, calm but firm. Eyes on me. Chelsea, how big is it? Give us the details. His question was a lifeline, a chance to make the point, and I took it. Over 6,000 square feet, I said evenly, my eyes fixed on Mandy. 4 bedrooms, a home office, a rooftop deck. I could keep listing, but you get the idea. The details landed like a punch, and I watched Mandy's confident mask crumble. My parents' eyes widened, shock spreading as if they were seeing me anew. Mandy made one last attempt, her voice quivering, barely holding itself together. This is insane, she stammered, shaking her head, hands flailing. You're telling me you own a mansion bigger than mine, paid in full, and nobody knew? That's not how it works, Chelsea, she said, panic creeping into her tone, a futile attempt to undermine me. But her words didn't stick. I tilted my head, meeting her gaze evenly. Maybe not for you, I said quietly, sharply. But I don't need to broadcast my wins to feel accomplished. The room fell silent, thick with tension. Mandy's face drained of color, her eyes flashing with something like fear. I knew the balance had shifted. My brother leaned in, voice calm but cutting. So Mandy, he said, eyes like daggers, you didn't answer me. Which organization gets the gala money? There's a name, right? Or is this all talk? His words were relentless. I saw Mandy's fingers twist her napkin, trying to hold herself together. She laughed, thin and forced. It's a new foundation, she said, hurriedly glancing at our parents for backup. We're still setting it up. Big plans, big donors. You don't need every detail to know it's legitimate. Her words trembled like a poorly memorized script, and her smile wavered. Dad's brow furrowed, pride giving way to doubt. Mandy, he said, cautious now. Everything's lined up, right? contracts, permits, all that. His tone wasn't harsh but carried weight. Mandy's hands shook, her eyes avoided his. Mom jumped in, voice tight, trying to soothe. I'm sure it's fine, dear, she said, twisting her hands in her lap, smiling falsely. Mandy had always been organized, but her gaze flicked nervously between me and our parents, uncertainty creeping in like cracks in a facade. I let my fingers hover over my wine glass, watching her shift uncomfortably. Her gala story was falling apart and I hadn't even revealed my full hand. I'd known for months that her charity was a front, a polished lie masking her own gain. I'd seen the emails, the transfers, the ways she funneled family money into her accounts under the guise of donations, but I wasn't ready to expose it. Not yet. My brother leaned closer, calm and insistent. Just curious, he said, tilting his head, eyes on Mandy. A gala like that costs serious money. Where's it coming from? Family trust, maybe? His words hit sharp and Mandy's face flushed, fingers clutching her napkin. That's none of your business, she snapped, composure cracking. She turned to me, eyes blazing. Chelsea, you're awfully quiet. What's this big win you're hinting at? Or are you just stirring the pot to feel important? Her words were a last-ditch effort to regain control, but they fell flat. I don't need to stir anything, Mandy, I said, calm, cutting through her bravado. I have receipts. Real ones, unlike some people. Her eyes widened briefly in panic before she masked it with another laugh. Dad's patience thinned, voice sharp. Chelsea, what are you talking about? Receipts. Mom's hands froze, face pale, eyes darting between us, bracing for the truth. I tilted my head, keeping my gaze on Mandy. Let's just say I've been watching, I said, calm but loaded. Numbers don't lie. Some stories don't add up. Mandy's knuckles whitened against her glass. I could see the panic setting in. My brother leaned closer, voice dropping, conspiratorial. Numbers, he said, glancing at me, then back to Mandy. Bank statements? You have something to show us, Chelsea. His push was deliberate and I smiled faintly, forcing Mandy to shift. Not yet, I said, lightly pointed. But I have everything I need to set the record straight. Mandy's laugh vanished completely, replaced by a mask of panic. My parents' eyes were locked on me, doubt in her growing by the second. I reached for my phone, slow, deliberate, letting the silence stretch. You want to talk about stories, Mandy? I said, cutting through the tension. Let's talk about yours. I unlocked my phone, slid it across the table. Take a look. That's the trail from your so-called charity. Transfers from the family trust to your personal account. Care to explain? Mandy's face went pale. Her glass hit the table with a dull thud. Hands trembling, breath shallow, she stared at the clear evidence. Dates, amounts, her name attached to withdrawals labeled as donations that never reached any charity. My parents leaned in, eyes wide, shock deepening. Chelsea, what is this? Dad asked, voice shaking, hands gripping the table. Mandy, what is she talking about? The pride he'd reserved for her was replaced by raw betrayal. Mom covered her mouth, eyes flicking between us, desperate for an explanation. Mandy scrambled, voice high, frantic. This is nonsense, she said, pushing the phone back, hands shaking so violently the table rattled. It's not what it looks like. I was managing the trust for the gala. You're twisting it, Chelsea. Her words crumbled under the weight of the evidence. I leaned forward, gaze unyielding. Twisting it? I said, low, steady. Numbers don't lie, Mandy. You siphoned thousands from the family trust, calling it charity while funding your lifestyle. I have emails, bank statements, the full trail. Want me to keep going? Her face drained of color, breath shallow, panic evident. My brother's voice cut through, calm but relentless. How much, Mandy? He demanded. How much did you take from the trust? Give us a number. She flinched, hands clutching her napkin. I didn't take anything. Mandy snapped, voice cracking, desperation flooding her face. It was for the gala, for the kids. You're blowing this out of proportion. But her words were hollow. My parents' eyes were fixed on her, the daughter they'd always trusted unraveling before them. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't betray the trust. Her words were desperate, but they carried a weight that made Mandy's shoulders sag, her defiance flickering and fading. I slid my phone back, movements calm and deliberate. It's all here, I said, my voice steady, slicing through her excuses. Over $100,000 funneled into your accounts. No charity, no kids, just you. I met Mandy's gaze. I've got the proof. The truth hit like a lightning strike and the room froze. The air was thick, hard to breathe. Mandy's eyes glimmered with anger, but beneath it lay fear. She knew she had no escape. You're lying, she whispered, voice shaky, unconvincing. You're just jealous, Chelsea, trying to make me look bad because you can't handle being second best. Her words were a final desperate swing, falling flat, ignored by everyone at the table. Dad pushed back his chair, the scrape sharp, his face a mask of rage and disappointment. Mandy, enough, he said, his tone final. Show me the accounts now. His words landed like a punch, and I watched Mandy's hands tremble as the reality hit her. There was no way out. Mandy tried to regain control, voice high and trembling. This is a misunderstanding, she said, waving her hands, attempting to dismiss the evidence. Those transfers were for the gala expenses. I plan to pay it back. Her words spilled out in desperation, but the confidence she always wielded was gone. Her eyes searched our parents' faces for mercy, but their expressions were stone, their trust shattered. Dad's voice cut sharply. Pay it back, he said, eyes narrowed, fists clenched. Mandy, you took over $100,000 from the family trust. You called it charity work and now you claim it was personal. His tone was raw, blending anger and betrayal, the first time he'd ever addressed her like this. Mom's hands shook, her voice barely audible. How could you do this, honey? She asked, words breaking as if mourning the daughter she thought she knew. I stayed composed, fingers brushing my wine glass, watching Mandy's world unravel. Years of a polished facade, her Highland Park mansion, big deals, fake charity, all collapsing. And I wouldn't let her wriggle free. You crossed a line, Mandy, I said, voice steady, cutting through her excuses. You didn't just take money, you lied to everyone here, thinking you'd get away with it. Mandy's eyes flared with fury, voice rising. You're enjoying this, aren't you, Chelsea? She spat, slamming the table, rattling glasses. You've been waiting to bring me down to make yourself look better. This is just jealousy twisting everything. Her words were a last attempt to shift blame, but they fell flat, the table now staring at her in disbelief. My brother leaned in, voice low but firm. She's not twisting anything, he said, locking eyes on Mandy. You took the money. You lied about the charity. Admit it. Mandy flinched, shoulders slumping, defiance crumbling under his clarity. Dad straightened, disappointment etched into his face. We trusted you, he said heavily. We bragged about you, Mandy. We thought you had it all together. And now this. He shook his head, hands trembling as if seeing her for the first time. Mom's tears spilled, voice choked. We gave you everything, she said softly. Why would you do this to us? Mandy gripped the table, breathing uneven. I was going to fix it, she admitted, voice cracking, desperate. I needed the money to keep up appearances. You don't understand how hard it is to stay on top. Her confession only deepened the hole she'd dug. I leaned in, gaze firm. You didn't need to stay on top, I said, letting every word hit like stone. You chose to lie, to take what wasn't yours while I built my life on my own. I paused, letting it sink in. I didn't take a cent from the trust. Everything I own, I earned myself. Dad's eyes widened, a mix of shock and respect. Chelsea, he said softly. You did all this without telling us? Mom followed, tears slowing, expression torn between guilt and awe. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I shrugged faintly, firm. You never asked, I said. You were too busy believing Mandy's stories to notice what I was doing. My brother nodded subtly, pride in his eyes as if he always knew I could do it. Mandy's voice broke, weak and frantic. This isn't fair, she said, shaking, eyes wild. You're turning them against me, Chelsea. I made one mistake and you're acting like I'm the villain. Her plea was powerless. My parents' trust in her was gone and there was no coming back. I stood slowly, deliberately, scanning the table. I didn't turn anyone against you, I said low. You did this yourself. Silence fell heavy with my words. I felt lighter than I had in years, their doubt finally lifted. The contrast was clear. Mandy, crumpled at the table, versus the golden image she'd crafted for years. I had exposed her lies and it was time to leave. I wasn't here to fix their mess. I was here to close the chapter. I pushed my chair back, soft scrape breaking the stillness, standing calm and deliberate. I'm done, I said firmly. You can deal with what's left. My parents' eyes followed me, guilt and awe mingling, but I didn't wait. Mandy's head snapped up, pale eyes desperate. I was already heading for the door, jacket slung over my shoulder. Chelsea, wait, Mom called, voice trembling, grasping for control. We need to talk about this, about you, everything. Dad nodded, voice soft, pleading. You can't just leave like this. I had waited years for them to see me, I wasn't lingering now. I paused at the door, glanced back, smile faint but firm. You had years to talk, Mom, I said simply, cutting. You chose her story instead. I didn't look at Mandy. Her silence was louder than any defense. My brother's subtle nod showed he understood why I was leaving. I stepped into the cool Texas night, weight of their doubt lifted, steps lighter than ever. My phone buzzed. A stream of texts from Mandy. I'm sorry, one read. I messed up. Let's talk. Another, don't do this, Chelsea. We're family. I didn't reply. Phone pocketed, engine started, I drove off, leaving their world behind. Next morning, balcony of my $5 million Preston Hollow mansion, early sun casting long shadows. Phone buzzed again. Mandy, relentless, begging to explain. I ignored it, eyes on the driveway. Mandy, alone, tense, hopeful and fearful. She pressed the intercom. Chelsea, please. I just want to talk. I can fix this. I watched calmly, unmoved. Security guard stepped forward, clipboard in hand, checking the list. Name. Voice flat. Mandy gave it, voice shaking. Guard shook his head. Sorry, ma'am. Your name's not on the list. Mandy's shoulders slumped, eyes searching for me. I didn't move, didn't wave. She froze, then turned slowly, defeated, disappearing down the drive. I watched, no regret, only certainty I'd done what I needed. Leaning on the balcony railing, city skyline in view, I let it settle. I built this life, properties, success, freedom, without their approval, without their trust. Mandy chose lies, theft, and a collapsing facade. My parents chose her over me. That was their loss, not mine. Lesson clear. You don't need validation to know your worth. I learned it carving my path while they praised empty promises. Mandy's lies caught up with her. She'd face the consequences alone. You can't fake your way to the top forever. I didn't need to destroy her to prove I'd made it. My life, mansion, success spoke for themselves. Back inside, phone silent, expectations lifted. I walked away from their table, doubts, drama, not looking back. They could keep their broken trust and fallen star.